What's going on, guys? It's TheGamingGabe here, and welcome to a new video. Today I'm just going to be talking about Atletico Madrid and the recent occurrences that's been happening. More sincerely and more precisely, the fact that Atletico Madrid have been knocked out of the Champions League in 4th place. Jesus Christ, guys, this needs to stop. So honestly, when looking at this, I really see it as just 3 main issues. And the first of it is just tactics in general. You know, when you look at Atletico Madrid, Simeone plays a 4-4-2. Now, first of all, why in the world are you playing 4-4-2 in the year 2022? That rhymes. I didn't mean to do that on purpose, but that rhymes. But I mean, it's such an outdated formation, and I get it. Like, it's a formation that wants to promote controlling possession and just having every player be involved, but it's just such an outdated formation that it just does not work in modern football anymore. And that is the first downfall for Diego Simeone's Atletico side. And looking at it, honestly, I understand why Simeone would want to have wingers that are deeper, but the problem is that the way he plays his players, it just completely throws off the balance, especially with the whole loan debacle with Griezmann. He would literally sub off João Felix, the 23-year-old who they bought for 163 million euros, pounds, whatever it was back in like 2019, something like that. And yet now Simeone just doesn't even want to play him anymore. Like, why would you sub him off playing 60 minutes and then just sub him off? Because looking at the statistics, Felix has more goal involvement than Antoine Griezmann does in twice the time that he does. And I know you can say, oh, he's playing twice as much time, but like, even when Griezmann does start, he doesn't do that much anymore. And it's just the fact that Simeone loves Griezmann so much that he's literally throwing his team to the gutter by doing this. And you know, like, looking at it, honestly, all of these problems could have been solved if Luis Suarez never left. Like, Atletico made a huge mistake letting Luis Suarez go. He should have stayed there. Honestly, he's a great finisher. Doesn't matter at his age now. He's still a great finisher. And the way I see it, they really could have played a 4-4-3, or if Simeone really wanted to, they could play 4-4-1. But let's look at the 4-3-3. Now, 4-3-3, for those of you who are more aware of soccer, a couple variations of it, just 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 attackers. Now, I feel like Simeone would probably want to play a 4-3-3 hold, 4-3-3 defend, considering the fact that he does play with center defensive midfielders rather than center midfielders. And while that is a viable option, again, that's just not. It's just too conservative. So I feel like he would be better off playing a 4-4-3 holding, as Barcelona does. And with Luis Suarez still there, put Griezmann back out on the wing, Suarez up top, redevelop João Felix to be a winger. He still can play there, you know. And and honestly, I feel like he would do even better now as a winger than he did when he first started out at Benfica. Why? He's fast, he has good ball control, and most of all, he has an eye for goal, and that is something extremely important. Like, why did Suarez succeed so well in Barcelona was because he had 2 players who were constantly feeding him, Messi and Neymar. The same can be done. Griezmann can do that with Suarez. João Felix is always the unselfish center forward. It could work. And now, even though they don't have Suarez, Alvaro Morata is a perfect player for that role. Like, he can play the big number 9 up top. And I get why Simeone will want to play Griezmann. He's fast, he's slender, he can play as a bit of a target man, but I don't trust him anymore. I do not trust Griezmann. Maybe back in 2018 he played the role well at the 4-4-2, but nowadays he just does not work in that position. It's time to let him go, put him back out on a winger, push him out back wide. Even a cam, even in midfield, he can work. He just needs a position where he's orchestrating the ball rather than being the one looking for goals up top, because otherwise he just goes. He doesn't do anything. Now, with Alvaro Morata, he really needs to step up his game. He was decent at Juventus and really did fill in that hole along with Cristiano Ronaldo. When Cristiano Ronaldo still played at Juventus, he stepped up a little bit when Moise Kean was not an option for Juventus last year, and before they got Vlahovic and Chiesa. But really, Morata really just needs to step up his game. He needs to stop whiffing. He needs to start scoring goals. He needs to become much more consistent. And honestly, Joao Felix just needs to redevelop how to become a winger again. He's a tricky center forward. He can play well. And I think he could easily become a winger again. Now, the other option that I didn't mention that Simeone could play if he really, really does want to play with wide midfielders is a 4-4-1-1, which is basically just 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, wide midfielders, 2 players out wide on the edges, rather than offensive wingers. Griezmann at striker up top, and Joao Felix as a center forward, trequartista. Sorry, my apologies. Which would basically be a role where he stays ahead of the midfield but behind Griezmann, and that's important because that's what he does as a center forward. He's able to link up the midfield and the offense being Antoine Griezmann. And no, I do have my reservations about Antoine Griezmann, but I feel like he can flourish more if he's just always staying forward, beating an offside trap, beating the low line that La Liga tends to run. Sorry, the high line, apologies. And it would just work, like Joao Felix has a killer eye for goal. He can make the passes. Griezmann's a clinical finisher on his day. It would just really work. Like, if Simeone really wanted to play with wide midfielders, he could make it work, but he doesn't. Now, returning to Joao Felix, Griezmann, and the loan debacle, he just messed it up. Like, I get it. He did a good job selling Griezmann to Barcelona, and he was bleeding them out for all the money he worth. And I get, it's a good loophole. Good job, Simeone. You found a good loophole. But he threw the balance of his team so much every single time he put in Griezmann. And who did he sub Griezmann on for? Joao Felix. Joao Felix, the man who needs game time at this point in his career and is just not finding it anymore. Now, I don't know where he should go. I definitely don't think he should go back to Benfica. He's a big fish in a small league. But he needs to find himself a club that will actually appreciate him. And I think it's time for him to go out on loan. Like, if I were Joao Felix, I'll put in a loan request to find me a European club that wants to play me and will play me, And that it was messy, it was poorly handled. Simeone was destroying the balance of his team just to put in Antoine Griezmann. And Antoine Griezmann, he's not the architect type player. He's more of a finisher. And what Atletico Madrid really needed is somebody who can attack and create. And that's where I feel like Luis Suarez was so deadly, was because he had Joao Felix who was able to link up the midfield, kind of that trequartista role. And then Suarez was always up front, clinical finisher, banging in goals. And it worked. But Griezmann just does it with 2 strikers like Alvaro Morata and Griezmann. Both strikers who are finishers and not architects. You need that architecture and the offensive third, and it just collapses, by taking out Joao Felix. The balance of the team just disappeared completely. And that's where I feel like that was just poorly handled. And if I were Joao Felix, it's time to go. I know he loves Atletico. I know it's his big money move, but there's no point in staying at your big money move if you're not playing. If Kylian Mbappe was on the bench at PSG, or if Erling Haaland was on the bench at Dortmund before he moved to Manchester City, or any big prospect, like, they would want to leave, like, they would not stand being subbed off every single game just so one player who's a bit more proven than you can play. It does not make sense, and I feel like if Joao Felix does reinvent himself as a winger, not only will it give him more options in terms of a club, it will also give him more chances to become on the Portuguese national team. Because obviously, the main man up top, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's got that striker spot locked down. Yes, sometimes Joao Felix comes on as a substitute, but I feel like he would have much more of an impact as a winger. And that's why I really feel that Joao Felix just needs to reinvent himself as a winger, needs to move Atletico. And speaking of Atletico, trust, failure, and Simeone. I feel like Atletico have put way too much trust in Simeone since winning La Liga in 2020, somehow beating Barcelona and Real Madrid. But I mean, the same thing happened to Olympique Marseille. They beat PSG in 2020, and look at them now. Last season, they got their worst finish. This season, last season, they barely finished in third. This season, they're out of the Champions League in Europe entirely. Like, Simeone has failed Atletico. He needs to leave. His tactics are outdated. He's just playing a 5-5-0. Go watch the Manchester City highlights. Literally 1 goal scored in 2 games. In 180 minutes, 1 goal was scored. Atletico Madrid had 0 shots on target for most of those games because he just had everybody defend. Like, you're not going to do anything if you do that. And that just does not work. Like, Simeone feels that, oh, I can just soak up pressure, find a small chance and capitalize it. Well, yeah, that works if you have players who are up ahead and are fast. Like, I get that he's trying to do a fluid counterattack, which is basically just soak up pressure, always look for the mistakes and then capitalize on said mistakes. But that doesn't work when you have 10 players in the defensive third of the field, and then they have to run all the way up and beat 6 players from the offense, and probably will get dispossessed somewhere in the midfield. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Like, Simeone, he has the right idea, but he's executing it extremely poorly. And honestly, his transfers are poor. His tactics are poor. The way he handles his players is extremely poor. And I feel like the fact is that Atletico Madrid's board are putting way too much confidence in him after having won La Liga and going to the quarterfinals and almost beating Manchester City in the quarterfinals last season in the Champions League. Like, it's time to let it go, guys. Like, I get it. Simeone, great manager. I'm not saying he's had his great moments, but it's time to let it go. Either he improves his tactics, changes the way he plays, and starts playing the players correctly, or Atletico Madrid's just going to find themselves not even in the Champions League next season. Honestly, the way they're playing, if this keeps going on, I could say that they could get easily Europa League, maybe even Conference League, and honestly, heaven forbid, God forbid, for the love of everything, for the love of soccer and Spanish football, they might even not be even in Europe next season. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not religious, and I hope that doesn't happen. But I don't want to see Real Madrid be the only ones in the round of 16. As Barcelona, they're good. They just were really unlucky this season. Like, they honestly deserve more this season, but it is what it is. Barcelona, Real Madrid, always good. Atletico Madrid, they just need to get rid of Simeone. Simeone is outdated. He doesn't know how to manage his players. He manages his players poorly, and it's just time for him to go. They need somebody new. They need somebody who actually is willing to take the reins and take initiative with their players during games and not just sit back and wait for the ball to come to them and just a chance and win. So, I mean, that's my thoughts on Atletico Madrid, especially after the fact that they've been grouped and knocked out of Europe entirely. And honestly, this needs to stop. Like, what is happening with Simeone, it needs to stop. So, hopefully you've liked this video, you found it a bit entertaining, a bit informative. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the whole Atletico Madrid situation. And if you like what I do, check out my other videos. I got a couple video essays on Formula 1. I'm planning on doing more soccer, play some FIFA Football Manager.